Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Tech News. Today we have a special guest, Mr. Ishad Musudi, who is currently a technical architect who has 13 plus years of experience in Java and in multiple industries such as banking, payroll, fintech, and logistics. So, Ishad, welcome to Tech News. A few words from you before we start our topic.
First of all, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to be a guest on Tech News. I'm thrilled to be here today to connect with your audience and share my experience as a technical architect.
Thank you, Ishad. So today the topic is very simple. So we've heard a lot of time about architects, and sometimes during discussion with people, when we say architects, it tends to be in the construction industry rather than the IT industry, right? And today we are going to experience it with you, and you would share your insight how you became a technical architect, right? So
Right.
Ishad, if you want to start over it.
Sure. Just before we start, just a brief about me. So, I've been working in the software development for over a decade now, and in that time, I had the privilege of building multiple solutions across a wide range of industries. I think we're all technical people here, and I think we can all agree that it's true. A strong development background is a common thread among technical architects. However, the role goes beyond just technical knowledge. While having a solid grasp of core technical concept during your design pattern is essential, but I would argue it only forms about half of the equation. So the other half of the equation lies in the non-technical skills like communication, leadership, strategic thinking, and to me, experience also plays a crucial role. So if you feel like being a top coder today, but you haven't got the architect promotion yet, don't be discouraged. You are likely already halfway there with your technical expertise. So now is the time to focus on honing, sharpening those soft skills to truly elevate yourself to the architect level. To me, I'm a strong believer that communication is one of the most important non-technical skills. As an architect myself, on a regular basis, I need to be able to clearly communicate complex technical concepts to both technical and non-technical audiences, and that includes developers, business analysts, clients sometime, right? So a lot of these come with strategic thinking as well. So architects need to see the big picture and make those decisions that consider the long-term vision of a product or the project. They should be able to understand the business goals and translate those into technical solutions. As an architect, leadership also is very important. Very often, you will be leading those development teams, and it plays a crucial role in setting up the directions, motivating the team members. So you should be able to delegate the tasks effectively, provide mentorship, foster a collaborative work environment. So I believe those are the main skills that you will probably require as an architect, but there's more to that. And I believe the other skills is not only applicable to architect, but also at any development level. Things like problem solving, very common, critical thinking, time management, prioritization of tasks. I believe a combination of all these skills will actually make you a better architect. So that's ahead.
Sorry, Ishad, you mentioned something very important, and I think this is something very key. You mentioned two things you've talked about experience, and especially why I want to take this topic. Each time I talk to people, especially the young generation which is taking up, I'm not saying they're bad, they're very, very good developers, maybe
All right.
much better than when I started my 2 years. If I take someone 2 years of experience, I know we are quite old. If we look at it from the past, 2 years of our experience, let's say 10, 15 years back, and 2 years of someone right now, it's kind of very different. They have
Right.
that exposure, they have that visibility, they have the vast amount of information, they have AI, right? But today, when we say experience to be a Java architect, is it something someone needs to have a decade of experience? How do you force it as an architect today, especially in the Java world?
Let's talk about that. It's a crucial factor, experience. I firmly believe that working across diverse industries gives you a unique edge in providing ideal solution for your clients. Why? Because with each new experience, you encounter different challenges, technologies, business goals, and this broadens your perspective and equip yourself with a richer and bigger toolkit of solution when tackling those new problem. So let's explore a bit this concept further with some of my experience. So back in the days when I'm still doing development, but some years back, I was working on a banking solution. So part of this solution was to get client to submit application and goes through the system and then and get approval or rejection, right? So system went live after a couple of months. We kind of go and review where we are in terms of how many applications we got, and we realized we've been getting a lot of applications, but a lot of these has been stuck at a level at a let's say within that process. There's a process where we expect the customer to come in the banking any outlet to submit their identification. So to me as a developer, I was like, why don't we just get rid of this part? We're getting so much application, and if we can just use the system to we are already doing some credit score, so we know that these people are eligible and can be accepted for that program. So why just do that? And then those big banking people, they explain this is very crucial part of their process. It's what they call the KYC, right? Know your customers. So for banking institution, security is paramount. They prioritize solution that thoroughly verify everything, adhere to strict regulation, even if it means having a slower process. So to them, it's okay to be slow, but as long as you go through the all the regulation and all. But that's in the banking world, right? I'll take another example. I was once, a couple of years back, working on an e-commerce solution. So in the fast-paced world in e-commerce, even half a second delay can make a huge difference. So for retailers, a smooth and speedy system is crucial to keep customer engaged and preventing them from abandoning their carts or heading to the competitions. So that's the contrast between the two. For the banking, maybe they would be okay to wait for a couple of seconds or take the process to be being slow. But in an e-commerce world, it's different. So these examples perfectly illustrate the importance of tailoring your solution. While a specific approach might be considered standard or acceptable in one industry, it may not be the best fit for another. So as an architect, you need to be able to be adaptable, to understand how to customize the solution to meet the industry standards and the specific client needs.
That's so interesting. Those two scenarios when you're talking about banking system and an e-commerce system whereby one needs to be fast, but the other, even the process of it can be slow. But as an architect, we need that experience and I would say focus to see vision, experience, and so on to see which one to be used at that particular time, right?
Right.
One part you've also mentioned about the trait or aspect of an architect. This one, I would say it's the communication skill, right? And we've noticed it, me and Abdallah, most of the time when we discuss our own strategy, not necessarily to be technical strategy, we need to draw, we need to communicate, we need to use lots of things. And some of the ingenious tool that Abdallah had shared with me was to use Notion. Even so for a tool, we can communicate. So for you as a Java architect, how do you foresee the aspect behind communication for someone who wants to ramp up the phase to become a Java architect?
Right. Communication, that's very key because, like I said, on a regular basis, you will have to deal with different audiences. To me, you have to know what's your audience. If it is a developer group, maybe I will come up with a clear documentation. Here are the diagram, here are the steps that we need to work on. On the other side, if I'm talking to business analysts or clients, maybe I will come up with presentations. And these are a way that I can effectively explain my decision to those stakeholders. And I have to make it clear. I need to be able to translate those technical concepts to people who probably doesn't understand the technical aspect of the project, right?
That's very key. When we talk about communication within the team, sometimes people tends to see, and I've experienced it recently, whereby we have silos. What's called silos in communication? You have communication happening with business, and then you have communication happening with the development team. And at the point whereby when they realize those two are not aligned, it's always late. Okay, we have very recent examples of it, and especially in my case, whereby I've seen it when I jump in a new company, whereby this, I would say, is two departments working separate. Even if you have a PO, even if you have a PM, sometimes we don't have it. And these are things whereby I foresee, especially in management, and these are things people tend to not take it as very important or crucial in the project. And I always emphasize on that. Whenever we start a work, include three important persons. The PM by default. Secondly, is the architect, the one who's very technical, who's leading the team leader, whoever it is as technical that needs to be here. And the third person is someone from business. It's always the business analyst, the PO, and whoever it is. This is something I learned from one of my mentors. His name is Boise, and he often said it to me like this: "This is the triangular for a project." And I always say, but sometimes it doesn't work, and it tends to be just a simple communication in between those three, and you have very smooth go through. And the last three you mentioned also, you mentioned a lot about leadership. Ishad, is there anything you would like to highlight around the leadership skill that someone needs to have? And this is something which today I'm not saying, I'll be very honest. I'm seeing someone who interviewing someone who is 5, 6, 7 years of experience, who's very good technically. I repeat it. I've seen people with 3, 4 years in Mauritius being very good technically, but they don't have those first two things. They don't have it. Communication. There's some issue. They can't communicate, and the leadership is not here. They can do the work, but alone. They won't have this time. But how do you force that with that role of a technical architect, especially the leadership part?
Right. I think you've touched a very important part, not only leadership, but also being a team player. You took a good example. You can be a very good technically. You can come up with good design, do the implementation yourself. But in the real world, it doesn't always happen like that. You always have to have a team behind you, right? You always need to be leading by example to that team. So I think leadership is very important. You need to be the person who can orchestrate.
And so what I wanted to ask is a bit more of a technical, because for me an architect is also, or maybe at the same time, a mentor for the team, for the different teams. And let's say for a moment I am an intermediate level Java developer and I have two choices. First is, do I go into microservices architecture, which is very popular in not only the Java world, but in enterprise world. So do I learn something? Do I invest myself into certification into, for example, Spring Boot? Or on the other side, there is also the concept of reactive programming, which is also used a lot in commerce, but I've also seen it in banking solutions like using Scala. For you, if I had a choice among these two, knowing that I can only choose one, I can invest deeply in certification of one, which would be the best and why?
Okay. Okay, tough question, but let's look at it. So I believe to be developer or an architect, you have to stay updated, continuous learning. The tech landscape is constantly evolving, so you have to make a commitment to do continuous learning by attending a conference, taking workshop, reading industry publication, and as you mentioned, maybe doing some certification, right? And I believe also it's also learning from others. So network yourself with experienced architect mentors and seek their advice. About your question, I think it's very based on the context or the circumstances. So to me, right now, the current project I'm working on, I believe it's a microservice approach that we will go, but in other, maybe in the other project or the product, maybe you would think maybe a reactive would be the most appropriate one. So it really depends on the nature of the project, on the industry instead that we were talking earlier. So my thought is for now, for me, it would be a microservice approach, but reactive is something that is coming very common. And we should be having that open mind. You should be ready whenever if that needs to be applied, that you'll be able to grasp this and apply that to your project.
Yes, thank you. So maybe just before we end, we will tackle the famous, what are the best 3 tips to become a Java architect?
Oh, well, I think we've touched on talking about the non-technical skills. So you should sharp on those soft skills. We've seen how much important they are. That's one thing. The other thing is based on my personal views, and I believe in specialization. So becoming an expert in something and having a deep knowledge in that specific area makes you very highly valuable. To me, I started in the very early in my career in Java, so I stick with it now. A decade over, I've stick with Java. So I strongly believe that having those deep knowledge, making yourself as an expert, and rather than becoming like a jack of all trades or master of none, right? And we've touched a bit about continuous learning earlier. You should be open. You should be able to keep evolving. For example, in Java world, last 10 years, microservice Spring has been a very an essential part, a people choice. But these are changing right now. There are framework like Quarkus coming on, and those, I believe those will be the next framework to be used. And if you look at this lifespan, your framework can stay for about 5 to 10 years. After that, you should be able to move to the next thing. So you should set yourself timelines and ready to be to jumping on the next train that comes around.
That's really interesting. I like the word jack of all trades, masters of none. I think the demand in IT today, and I think there's two things I would like to add to it. Especially the demand here is very high, be it in Java, be it in .NET, be it in any world today. But when we look at it, 2, 3 languages, if you are at it, this helps you definitely. But specializing and moving in an architectural path needs something very specific, needs something to be experienced, to be exposed, to be able to deliver to it. And that kind of bring it to a quick summary of what we've discussed so far. So thank you, Ishad, for coming as a speaker to on Tech News. Thank you and enjoy your rest of the evening.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much, Tech News.